Big one this weekend, first day of March, and this one is going to have a March feel to it. Kentucky at home in Rupp Arena against Auburn, the consensus number one team in the country. Although Ken Palm tells us Auburn is the second best team in the country right now behind Duke. We have seen this Kentucky team get up for big games repeatedly this year. The only big game opponent that has been able to figure out Kentucky this year is Nate Oates' Alabama Crimson Tide. This is still a Kentucky team with wins over Duke on a neutral, Gonzaga in the state of Washington, Florida in Rupp Arena, Texas A&M in Rupp Arena, Tennessee on the road, Tennessee again at home. They've slayed a lot of giants, but there is no giant other than Duke that is bigger than the Auburn Tigers. Dion, how excited for this game are you, first of all?
Very. I love watching Auburn play. They're my favorite team in the country. I don't. You never know what you're going to get from a Chad Baker Mazzara team, and then I think you can say similar things about Kentucky, right? Like you don't know if you're going to get the Kentucky team that struggles or the Kentucky team that gets 14 straight points to end the game from Otega Owe, nearly fights the whole crowd. Like it's special. It's entertaining. The theatrics from both teams when they're individuals is phenomenal. The theatrics we're going to get with both teams together, I think, is going to be even better. I hope this is a good game. I have some fears that it might not be, just because I just think Auburn and Duke are so much better than anybody else in the country, besides maybe Houston. So I hope it's a really good game, but I do have some fears that it might get away from Kentucky a little bit.
Why is that? You just think there's a caliber difference between Auburn, or is this injury related, or what?
I think there's a caliber difference. I think if Kentucky had been healthy the whole time, I think they could hang more than I think they will be able to. I think they're still um, getting everybody back into the flow of things and playing together. That Oklahoma game was like their first time playing together. Literally, I think since December, maybe early January. But they've dealt with like injury issues that you don't necessarily see at the college level. I would say like they've dealt with some extreme injury issues, and I just think Auburn's not the team that you want to be gelling your team chemistry together against. Auburn's not the team that you want to be like relearning how to play together against. Now, Mark Pope's had a few days in the Oklahoma game to get them together, and I think if I've been saying it for the last few months. To me, Mark Pope's a top three coach in the country, if not the best coach in the country. Like if you're choosing coaches you want for the next 10 to 20 years, that conversation starts with Mark Pope, in my opinion. Um,
Oh.
he he's special. So I don't want to doubt them too much. I've done that before and been wrong, but I do think Auburn's. You wish this game was a week later than it is if you're Kentucky.
Some big time praise from you for Mr. Mark Pope. I'm not saying I disagree, but I think maybe a month ago he was like the consensus national coach of the year. That's kind of fallen off though, right? Like they've been up and down and inconsistent as the injuries have played out.
Yeah, I think he's to me he still should be the coach of the year. I, I
Really?
I think the reason he isn't anymore is our expectations for this team got so high. But I still think like if you stop the season now and look where they're at, in terms of like the top 25, the SEC standings, so on and so forth, they're still so much better than anybody thought they were going to be. As the 17th team in the country going into the season, right? Like if you told Kentucky fans going into the season you would be a top 20 team in the country, a second weekend tournament team, and you're one of the best teams in the SEC. I know the record doesn't necessarily show that because of the injuries. Like they take that every day of the week. That's more than what they expected, you know? And I think to me, coach of the year and being a coach is about elevating. And even though they're 8-7 in the SEC, 19-9 overall, he has still elevated this team despite the injuries. Like I still think they're over exceeding what we thought they would do despite the injuries and despite the struggles.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't want to disagree with that. I think that's fair. He's done a great job. No disrespect intended, but Yeah, high praise to say he's the number one guy that everyone would take. So much has been made of Kentucky being a big game team. I think rightfully so. They have a great record against top 20 opponents. They've only lost to Alabama twice. Outside of that, they're pretty great. If you really want to, Clemson is now a top 20 opponent. So you could go back to that game and circle it and give them one extra loss. But at the time, Clemson wasn't all that sexy as a team. When there's been these big moments in the season, Kentucky has just sort of been a team that consistently gets up for them mentally and emotionally. Easier when they're at full strength health wise. I still don't know if they're fully healthy right now. Lamont Butler played last game and fouled out. Jackson Robinson didn't play the second half of the game. So I think they're getting there. They're healthier than they've been, but maybe not all the way healthy. What I find interesting is this. Everyone talks about Kentucky as a big game team. Auburn has played all of the best teams in the country.
Yeah.
All of them. Auburn per KenPom is the number two team in the sport. Guess what, Dion? They have played the number one team in the country at their own home arena at Duke. They have played the number three team in the country. They played Houston on a neutral earlier this season. They have played the number four team in the country. They played Florida. They have played the number five team in the country, Tennessee. They have played the number six team in the country, Alabama, and they still have another game coming against Alabama. If you want to go outside of the top six, I mean, they have literally played the five best teams in the country that aren't them. But you want to go outside of that top six, they've also played Iowa State, the 13th best team in the country, on a neutral. They've played Purdue, the 17th best team in the country, on a neutral. They've played the 11th best team in the country, Missouri, at home. Guess what their record is in all of these games? You can probably guess because they have a pretty great record overall, right? They've only lost two of them. They have six different wins against top 17 opponents this season. One of the two losses, again, was Duke at Duke. The only game you can really criticize Auburn for was Florida at home. I think about it like if narratively Kentucky's going to be the quote unquote big game team in this game, are we sure Auburn doesn't also have that element to them? I mean, they jumped all over Duke at Duke in the first 4 minutes before Isaiah Evans went nuclear in that game. And then they went into Alabama a night where everyone, including me, thought Alabama was going to get a win, and Auburn was just definitively the better team from start to finish. So I have my suspicion Auburn's also a big game team this year. Do you think that's fair, or am I wrong?
Oh, I think Auburn's special. I think when you like Auburn's the question mark on Auburn is like is Chad Baker Mazara gonna do something to like that like freaks the whole team out or he gets ejected, like whatever. There's a little bit of a question mark in terms of like how crazy they are. That also makes you a team that fears nothing. That fears nothing. They don't care where they play, who it's against. They're getting off the bus thinking that they're better than the next team. That's why I think this is a rough spot for a Kentucky team that's gelling themselves back together post all the injuries. Because that's an Auburn team. Like Rupp's going to be phenomenal. Auburn don't care. Like Auburn don't care. They went. I know Rupp is like a bigger arena. It's going to be louder than what Auburn dealt with against Alabama. However, a rivalry game in state down the road against like one of the best teams in the country too. That's maybe Alabama's biggest home game in program history, and they went in and just didn't care. Like they didn't care. That game got close at moments, but in my opinion, for like 70% of it, Auburn dominated that game. And I think that's just the worst team you want to play against in this spot if you're Kentucky. And it's not, it's, yeah, I think there's a talent discrepancy, the whole nine, but the spot for Kentucky is just rough.
Yeah, rather, maybe this is the way to say it. Rather than a big game team, Auburn's an every game team.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're just relentless. They're going to show up and just be the psychopathic talented team that they are, full of athletes, whether they're playing a great opponent or whether they're playing an iffy opponent. Really, the only time this year they've got again was at home against Florida, and Florida just jumped all over them in the second half. But I think like you've clearly like the way to get to Auburn or hang with Auburn that both Duke and Florida did was you've got to be physically imposing and not spooked by the Auburn athleticism. I don't know that I would say Kentucky qualifies for that right now. Like, can we look at the Kentucky personnel a little bit here? How do we think they're going to hang against Auburn's relentless athleticism and physicality?
I think Ortega can. I think Ortega can. I think Ortega. If Auburn's an every game team, Ortega's an every game player, right? Like Ortega doesn't. Ortega doesn't care either. I think the biggest issue Kentucky's going to have is turnovers. I think they're really, really going to struggle with Auburn's physicality, especially at the guard spots. Janai should have his way, I would say, with the bigs as well, which creates an issue. If your guards are going to turn it over, their big men should have their way. That it feels like a bit of a mismatch with that defensive pressure that you mentioned.
Yeah, I think let's just do this. We'll go through Kentucky's box score against Oklahoma, and let's just go through up and down. Can this guy hang against the Auburn physical athleticism lineup? Otega Owe, yes.
Yeah.
Maybe not 100% Lamont Butler. I'll still say yes.
Yeah, I would say yeah.
Amari Williams?
I think Amari can.
Physically, yes, but is he ready for like the psychosis that is Dylan Cardwell and Janai?
I think Jackson Robinson and Amari Williams might get their feelings hurt on Saturday.
That's what physically I like those two guys, mentally and emotionally, especially if Jackson's still banged up. I'm terrified of like Jackson Robinson versus Baker Mazzara
Yeah,
potentially.
yeah, no, Jackson's gonna get his feelings hurt. Like he might be able to hit. He Jackson could score 25 points, and Chad's gonna say something that completely takes Jackson out the game for a stretch.
And we don't know for sure that either of those guys are going to play. Baker Mazzara played 29 minutes against Ole Miss, but he was listed as questionable. But like again, it's Baker Mazzara. He's questionable for everything he does in life at all times. So I yeah, but you get where I'm going, right? Owe and Butler are yeah, not worried about them. Williams and Robinson, okay, little dicey. Andrew Carr, uh-oh, no thanks. Kobe Bryant, uh-oh, no thanks. Travis Perry, Trent Noah, Colin Chandler, absolutely not.
Yeah,
And those guys, Dion, they played 32 combined minutes against Oklahoma. In crunch time, Noah and Perry were on the floor like the entire time. I straight up don't think those guys can play in this game.
yeah. No, I agree. For what it's worth, I don't think Kobe Bryant can play in this game either. Um,
He's gonna have to though, given
yeah,
where they're at, right?
I think if you were like looking to find something wrong with Kentucky, I think that's part of it. They have probably four guys who I think should be on rosters, but they should be on rosters in a sense of like if they give us something that's great, if they don't, we're fine too. But I think they have a couple guys that like they're relying on to do stuff consistently that you don't necessarily want to rely on.
So we are building this up into this big, scary monstrosity, which Auburn is a scary monstrosity. I don't want to act like they're not. If you're Kentucky, what can you do that you think will work against Auburn?
Run, 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 run. Run, run, run. And what's crazy is that's exactly what Auburn wants you to do. I think that's why Auburn's so special is they want to get in a crazy high-paced game with you, but at the same time, that's your only shot to beat them. Your only way to beat them is to play into what they're looking for. And that is a scary, scary like thing to think about. But they got to run. If it becomes a half court game and you let Auburn set their defense up, I Kentucky struggled to score against nobody, but I think they're going to struggle to score in comparison to what Auburn's able to do in the half court against them.
Yeah, I think it's two things. I like the idea of running because Auburn likes to play fast, but they're not the fastest team in the entire sport. Like they only have the 125th fastest tempo. You compare that to Kentucky. Kentucky plays the 35th fastest tempo. So Kentucky is more comfortable running than Auburn is. And I think back to that Florida game. Really the only time all year Auburn's truly been outplayed by a team. Florida's good. They're probably a one seed, but they're gettable. They're not special. And Florida was just relentlessly pushing the pace. And it even felt like in that game, Auburn couldn't keep up with Florida's pace. So to me, it's that, it's tempo, and it's one other thing. It's simple, but make your threes,
Yeah.
right? That's Kentucky has at times felt unbeatable on nights where they just go nuclear from three. It sounds like a tall task, but the reality is to beat Auburn, even at home, you probably need a 55% shooting night from three. Go out and make 15 threes out of 30 that you shoot. And I think you're in a really, really awesome spot. If you don't have that, I think it's going to be an uphill battle.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. They have to I mean, how many threes do you think they have to make to stay in this game? I think my number is probably a little too high, but I have one in my
To
head.
stay in it, I think you need 10.
I was gonna say 15. To win,
Really?
I think you got to touch 20.
Ugh, that's so many, but
That's so many.
I feel like the fewest amount of threes that I could see Kentucky making in this game and winning the basketball game is probably 12 or 13.
I and this is also probably an extreme hot take. It's the first full day back on the channel. Folks are gonna have to let me get a few hot takes off that I've just been saying to the mirror. We're back. Dylan Carwell is like the best defender in the country, from like a rim protection perspective, in my opinion. And I've felt that way for the last like month or two. I'm like, Janai's getting all the credit, but Dylan's the one that like is special to me on defense, at least. Janai can switch more, which is a obviously like plays a role. I don't know how this team's going to score in the paint though. Like with Janai down there, Dylan, like I don't see it.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I think it's a terrifying proposition. I mean, to that point, Auburn starts Janai Broome and Dylan Cardwell. Now they don't play them the whole game together,
Right.
but just think like starting lineup. The opening tip is Amari Williams on Cardwell and Andrew Carr on Janai Broome. Is that what we're doing?
Right.
Like what? How do you want to get to a point in this game if you're Kentucky where it's Amari Williams guarding Janai Broome, and even if you get to that point, what do Janai's numbers look like in this game?
Yeah. I'll be straight up honest. If I'm Mark Pope, there's going to be a moment in this game where I say, I don't care what Auburn does offensively. I'm playing Andrew Carr at the five, and we're going to trade twos for threes.
Oh,
That's what I would do. Like,
just
you
go
guys can
super
whatever.
small and try and outscore them.
For every three layups you make, we only have to make two threes. And I'm going to go super small. I'm going to put my shooters on the court, and we're going to launch them up there.
I mean, that has been Kentucky at their best this year, right? It's just been like the type of games where they almost don't even think about defense. Just first to 110, we'll beat you.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the way you have to play against this Auburn team. You have to make your shots though. I mean that was Alabama's biggest thing. It wasn't like Alabama got bad look. I mean Alabama can't shoot. That's that's the biggest thing. But it's not like Alabama got bad looks, but like they missed their shots.
Yeah.
You can get some looks against Auburn. You just have to hit them. And I think if you go super small and just buy into that, it would allow them to get into a rhythm before you go back to Amari and Brandon Garrison.
I like that shout. The thing is, if they want to play first to 110, the only thing I would say, Auburn's one of the only teams in the country that will hear that and be like, "Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's go."
So
Like
that's why I placed a future on Auburn is because the only way to beat them is to play exactly how they want to play too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. And I do think when you play a team as good as Auburn, you can get sort of out of your element where you're focused on trying to stop them instead of just playing your game. So maybe the biggest thing for Kentucky truly, let's go just try and play our A plus game on our terms. And if you can make your threes and like you said, focus on the scoring, I will say a team that shoots a bunch of threes that can make them is a good profile to pull an upset. So if the Rupp Arena crowd gets into it, and like you mentioned, it wasn't Alabama shots that were the problem, it was that they weren't going in. If Kentucky's making threes, all of a sudden this becomes a different game. So it should be a highly entertaining one, Dion. Let's get to our prediction here. Ken Pomeroy says that Auburn will win this game by 5 points, 86-81 in Rupp Arena. What do you like from a betting perspective or just a prediction standpoint?
um, I think I like Auburn by double digits. And that's not me taking anything away from Kentucky. I think that's just where I'm at when it comes to Auburn and Duke at this point. I probably need to switch my tone and add Houston to that group. But I think that's where I'm at with Auburn and Duke, where it's like there isn't a game that I feel like they can't win by more than 5 points. I like they would have to be favored by 12 to 13 points against anybody else in the country besides each other for me to be like, I want to be on the other side.
Yeah, I hear you on that. Anytime you get Auburn at single digits right now, it's intriguing. Look, at home, Kentucky's gotten got twice this year. Once by Alabama, they lost by 5. Once by Arkansas in the John Calipari return game. So they really haven't been decisively outplayed other than in that weird Calipari night. It's hard for me to see a blowout loss for Kentucky at home in that building. but Auburn's so damn good. I'm gonna duck it, and I'm gonna say I'll take the over. 167 points is the projected line. Dog, I think this could be 104 to 101.
It's only 167. I'm finding a over 200 alternate line. I don't.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. I hope we get shot making galore in what should be a wildly entertaining game.